Greetings, and welcome to Beatles Stuffology, where two old friends sit about and talk BS, Beatles stuff, on a track-by-track basis, pretty much for the sake of it. My name is JG McQuarrie, and I'm here with my co-host Andrew Deacon. Say hi, Andrew.
Oh, hello from the sweaty south.
Yeah, it's a sticky north at the moment as well, but how are things down south?
Sweltering, mate, innit? Sweltering. Yeah. All anyone now talks over a certain age is, oh, is this hotter than 76? Oh, but there you go. And we're recording on Saturday, the 11th of July, and the heat is interfering with the quality of the audio, but hopefully normal service will be resumed fairly soon.
Oh, what a great way of covering that was. I'm fundamentally impressed by your ability to really lead into the BS part of Beatles Stuffology. Well done. Good.
We should also point out, and as you told me before we started recording, that as of this week, we have now hit 50,000 listens/downloads. I'm not sure which, but maybe both either, which is pretty remarkable. Slightly less remarkable when you work out that we've had about 5,000 episodes, but
it's still pretty good for two white middle-aged guys who are completely averse to publicizing themselves on social media.
Absolutely. So I'd like to thank anyone who's listened to more than one episode, and if you've made it this far, well done for sticking with it. I very much doubt we've got anyone that's with us from episode 1. Please let us know if you are somebody who's been listening from the very start. And in particular, because I think I'd be shocked if I now went back and actually listened to some of the first maybe 30 episodes. I suspect they're probably pretty bad. I think we've only hit our groove in the last 45 minutes.
Well, I don't know if I would put the groove hitting moment quite that close to ours contemporaneously, but yes, it's always the catch, isn't it? You know, like people are obviously going to start with the first episode and they're never going to be the best because you learn how to do it as you go along. But 50,000 episodes, 50,000 episodes, yeah, that probably is right. 50,000 listeners, even that's not bad. I'm quite pleased with that.
Yeah,
overall.
Yeah, it should be absolutely. How many copies of Penny Lane did the Beatles sell?
Well, slightly more than 50,000. It must be said.
They had a head start, didn't they? So, yeah. How many podcasts did John Lennon have listened to? Yeah,
Lazy bastard.
We're ahead of him by about 50,000. So, yeah.
Good. Well, anyway, Well, let's apart from committing podcast suicide, I think we're probably doing Penny Lane this week.
I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that we are substantially more successful podcasters than John Lennon.
It is a factually accurate statement.
It's not like him saying they were bigger than Jesus. Okay, this is not going to be disproportionately controversial in the Philippines, is it? Come on.
No, that would also involve us having any listeners in the Philippines. Well, let's just gloss over that for the time being.
Melda Marcos is going to be really upset with us.
Yeah, well, we can probably just shoo her away. Right, okay, Penny Lane.
Hello, yeah, Penny Lane. Isn't this fun?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to play with the format this week because I've got a number of arguments that I'd like to put forward for discussion, and then perhaps if we can hang some of the conversation about the song off that. And my first one, and these are in no particular order. They're in the order I wrote them down. Make of that what you will. Penny Lane is merely a better, more sophisticated version of Yellow Submarine.
Okay, so I think that is a completely defensive argument, but there is one thing I would take issue with in that argument, and it is the word merely.
No.
Yeah, I don't think it's merely a better version of Yellow Submarine, but if you want to posit an argument that it's a better version of Submarine, then I think there are more than enough parallels between the two for that to stand.
I think so, and I particularly remember when we were talking about Yellow Submarine, me pointing out the fact that there's lots of sort of nice images in there, but it doesn't really go anywhere. Nothing happens. You know, you talk about where they will live in the Yellow Submarine as being such a wonderful place, and yet he doesn't live there anymore. And you think, well, where's the missing bit of the story there? But you get, oh, there's this person. Oh, this happens. Oh, we live there. Isn't it wonderful? And it is. It's all wonderful. But then it just kind of goes out on a, let's sing the chorus a few times and the song ends. Well, it's not that dissimilar to this, is it? It's that episodic kind of revisiting of something that was particularly attractive um, back in the past that we're no longer attached to. It's just that what we're talking about here is less surreal and slightly more grounded in reality, although there wasn't a banker and so on and so forth. It's not based on real experiences. It's based on images of their childhood memories. But it's also got, I think, melodic similarities as well. It feels to me like this is a version of that kind of melody that they spent more time on, and also because they're writing it for themselves. Well, in this case, it's being worked up for Paul to sing, and it's got less of that sort of jokey resonance. So I think there's quite a lot in there that suggests to me that this is Yellow Submarine Part Two, and all the better for it.
Okay, so I'm going to revisit one of our older catchphrases on this podcast. So,
Oh boy.
ladies and gentlemen, so two things. Firstly, I don't think that this is less surreal than Yellow Submarine. I think this is more surreal than Submarine, but in a very Yellow Submarine, but in a very different kind of way. I think the imagery here is very fractured, very broken, and I think this is I mentioned this when we talked about Strawberry Fields, but I think this is another song where surreal is a much better word to describe it than psychedelic. Now, obviously, there are overlaps. The Venn diagram of those two things is not a complete circle, but I think that this song is much closer to sort of, again, I said this before, but genuine surrealism, as in the floating, dreaming, unconscious kind of surrealism, rather than shorthand for "ooh, that's a bit weird, isn't it?" And I think that's why this pairs so well with Penny Lane. I make it sound like a wine. It's not a wine, but yeah, it pairs so well with Penny Lane. But it does, because I think they take very similar approaches to kind of like the disintegration of logic within the lyric. They even both kind of end in the same way. Strawberry Fields is that kind of false fade out where it comes back and then it's got like Ringo freaking out in Cranberry Sauce. And here we have the kind of the harsh ringing of the bell. It's like kind of reality is starting to intrude into this kind of sort of fractured kind of surrealistic world. So I would say that. The other thing I would say was, yeah, I kind of really agree about the imagery here, because this is again very sort of vivid imagery put together in extreme shorthand, but there's much more connective tissue. It feels like this is actually building a scene, building an area, building a feel for what's going on within the lyric, which, as you say, Yellow Submarine doesn't really do. And it's not that, like, there's still memorable images in there, but it doesn't all cohere into anything. There is a kind of coherence to this, the way that the different characters drop in and out, the way that we revisit them later on in the song, like that builds the connective tissue of the song out. It feels like it's genuinely about something.
I think what's interesting about Yellow Submarine is I think people believe there's more there than there actually is, but then it's because the picture that gets painted is so vivid. Here I believe it's slightly less vivid, but maybe because it's more grounded in reality, that it makes that contrast a little bit more in depth. So you kind of you feel like you've seen a complete picture. And because the banker and the barber get revisited as well, you feel like you're getting more of a narrative than you actually are. You're getting vignettes into a slice of potentially a day in the okay, right,
careful.
Yeah, I know. A day in the life. Yeah. But it's a little picture in which nothing really happens. But it's not worse for that. If anything, it's all the better for it. And you can sort of see the lyrical similarity with something like Being for the Benefit of Mr. Kite as well, where it's effectively, well, there's this, then 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 there's this. Ta-da! It's fine. At least it's better than, oh my God, you don't really love me in the way that I love you. Why don't you love me? So yeah, you're right. It's not a complaint. It's just obviously the better that they are getting at what they're doing, the more we're going to sort of see some of these sophisticated ideas coming through. And it's like, so well, okay, here's the link from this to this, and I think actually we'll probably talk as well about the musical. Well, it's quite a simple song, but it's complex behind it. But I don't really want to get into that until I get to argument number four. But it's there is something related to that that again you can sort of see the through line from Yellow Submarine to this to say all you need is love as well. There's something going on there where simplicity is in itself very, very clever.
Well, I think, yeah, I absolutely agree in terms of the looking forward, but I think looking back as well, the other song that this really reminds me of is For No One. And it's because of that observational quality. There's no insertion into For No One for like an authorial voice. It's just about, it's almost like a I think we said at the time, it's like a kitchen sink drama or like a documentary. We're watching something which is going on as this couple's relationship slowly kind of grinds to a halt. And this is the same. It's a very kind of observational, almost documentary kind of lyric. Yeah, a slice of life. This is what this character is doing. This is what this character is doing. Vignettes, all this kind of stuff put together to form an overall picture of what's going on. And it's that same sense of remove. We know that this song comes from sort of the childhood nostalgia of McQuarrie and Lennon as well. And we know that it's built out from that. But given that that's the case, I don't want to linger too much in the whole nostalgia bit right now. But given that that's the case, I think it's quite surprising how little of McCartney that there is in the lyric. There's no kind of like authorial insert here. It's just an observation of these characters. Whether they were real or not doesn't really matter. That's not the point. But it is that slightly, documentarian remove. And that makes it all the more effective.
So, which is quite interesting in a couple of ways. Firstly, because argument number two is all cultural forms inevitably become nostalgic. Um, but secondly, in relation to that, that when Lennon was talking about writing um, in my life, he said, so it started out as a bus journey from my house to town, mentioning every place I could remember, and it was ridiculous. This is even before Penny Lane was written, and I had Penny Lane, Strawberry Fields, Tram Sheds, and it was the most boring sort of what I did on my holidays bus trip song, and it wasn't working at all. I cannot do this. I cannot do this. He said, which is really interesting because they managed to do that, but also avoid that here. It is a case of, oh look, here's this, here's this, here's this, here's this. But it's done in a way that is more nostalgic because it's about the people that are there than the place itself. Although, of course, you know, argument 2A is about place, but we'll come on to that. So, there is that sense of nostalgia that runs through this, but also actually there's quite different forms of nostalgia. And I think it's really interesting to reflect on the times themselves, because I think it was a couple of years before when Prime Minister Harold Wilson made a speech where he talked about the white heat. It's got referred to as the white heat speech. And somebody said, said, of course, it's a cliche that we are living at a time of such rapid scientific change that our children are accepting as part of their everyday life things that would have been dismissed as science fiction a few years ago. And so it talks about the fact that I think it was estimated that something like 98% of all scientists that have ever lived are living at the moment, for example. And the speech was less about technology and more about scientific progress, but the whole point was the white heat revolution this revolution would be a scientific one, and that we should be looking to make economic and social advances through the application of science, investment in science. But to an extent, he's right that there was ever increasing technology that existed at this point. And yet, interestingly, this is the point at which the Beatles almost fall into an Edwardian style of dress, and in particular, facial hair. It's a time at which some of McCartney's musical instincts are starting to come out, and they're starting to venture into instrumentation that is more orchestral, for example. They're now delving into the past of their own lives rather than their contemporary lives. Although we should point out that they are already 26 at this point, so their old lives, their childhoods, not exactly a long time ago. So we've come so far, and we've been really progressive, but now we're starting to root some things in the past, which is a really interesting idea. You've just got to look at the video for this, which is hilarious for all the wrong reasons. But the look that they are now adopting, which would have been quite surprising to it, was quite surprising. You look at some of the reactions.
It was shocking. People were genuinely shocked by it.
Yeah. The reactions of the American audience to these two videos being shown on American TV are quite funny, and people not being able to sort of comprehend taking that new look. So it's really interesting that we've not got a song that has a direct lineage with the kind of like the blues and the rock and roll that really influenced their early years. But we are taking a much more kind of sophisticated version of the musical style that McCartney so loved and perhaps reminded him of, songs growing up at home. So it's just that interesting point that we're getting a bit of a temporary sea change, but a sea change in their influences.
Yeah, that thing about technology is really interesting as well, because, like that's one of the most interesting things about this era of the Beatles, is that they are developing some of the most sophisticated music ever recorded with what is functionally, even for 1966, 1967, primitive technology. They're going to be stuck on 4-track right up until Abbey Road, which just seems absurd, and yet they can do stuff with it that pretty much nobody else was capable of. And obviously that's not just them. It's George Martin, and it's everybody, EMI, and all the people who work in the background. So they deserve some of the credit. They certainly don't deserve all of the credit. There's plenty to share around, but it's kind of really fascinating that push forward in terms of the quality of what can be recorded and how something can be constructed is completely at odds with the technology that is being used. There's I'm going to do a slight sidebar into one of my preferred topics, and then I'll stop talking, I promise.
But before you do that, though, I just want to point out they are using that new technology, things like the Mellotron, in order to get sounds from the past. They to get brass sounds, to get classical instrumentation.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they are not using that to in a Kraftwerk sense to have new innovative modern sounds. They're using it in order to be able to replicate some sounds of the past. Okay, sidebar.
That thing about the way that scientists are and the way that scientists are perceived is also really interesting part of kind of social history. Obviously, and regular listeners to the podcast, of who there must be at least some, will be aware that I'm a big science fiction lover. I love Doctor Who and Star Trek and all that kind of stuff. And if you watch episodes of both Doctor Who and Star Trek from the 1960s, and the lead characters meet scientists, if that character defines himself by the fact that they are a scientist, they are almost always trusted. They are almost always somebody to whom those characters can have faith in. If the Doctor meets a scientist, it goes without saying that they will be roughly on the same page and will work together in order to resolve whatever this week's conflict is. It's a little bit less clear with the original Star Trek, but it's still there. The idea that this would be this sort of can't even say the word, technocracy would be the way that we find solutions. Star Trek often equates social and technological progress as the same thing. They are equivalent to each other. As our technology progresses, so we will be able to improve society. If you move forward to something like the 1980s, that stops being the case. And scientists aren't necessarily the ones. Not only are they not the ones to be trusted, not the ones who will help. They're often the ones who are responsible. So early Next Gen is very like that, and late Doctor Who of the classic series is very like that as well. There are other sci-fi examples as well. I'm not going to go through them all, but there is a very clear social shift in the way that science and scientists are seen. In this period, in the 1960s, we still have that idea that that will be the future. Sure, the white heat of technology, it's going to revolutionize society. The science fiction, I mean, like 20 years ago, what we were doing now was science fiction. We're talking to each other on a video call with no lag whatsoever, hundreds and hundreds of miles apart. That was the sort of thing that Captain Kirk did on the bridge of the Enterprise. It is not the sort of thing two middle-aged blokes did so they could sit down and discuss a band from the 60s. That wasn't a thing. And that progress, that way that technology is seen, I think it's a really kind of interesting bit of sort of social history, and does have some relevance to this. So it's not just an excuse for me to talk about one of my favorite subjects.
Whereas in the 2020s, the representations of scientists that most people will be aware of, what do you reckon? Big Bang Theory?
Oh God, probably, yeah. I'm not sure that's it's certainly another change. The nerds have taken over, and in heavy quotation marks, we won. But that there's also a question as to whether that's a general triumph of nerd culture rather than something which is specific to the way that scientists are perceived. So you have, the rise of the second raft of Star Wars. You have Marvel. You have DC. You have all these kind of properties which have come forth, and alongside that, inevitably, science has a certain perception. So, yeah, there are arguments to be had there, but we should probably actually get back to the song we're supposed to be talking about, right?
Okay, so argument number 2A, which really should be 3, but there you go.
Okay.
Reverence for a place is always better discussed. It's not worth testing if the place still holds that reverence. Now, I was interested to read that Paul McCartney, I think in a biography, he's quoted as saying, "Oh, I always like to take people on a drive through Penny Lane and say, oh, that's where the bank was. Oh, that's where the bus shelter was. That's where the barbers was." And I just sort of think, no, you don't. No, you don't. You really don't. You might have done it a couple of times, maybe, if you're lucky. But I think that Penny Lane has been so effective as a song. It's now a place of like romantic symbolism for many people, and I can't help but feel that anyone on a tour would be a little bit like, here's a 90s reference for people, a bit like John Major in the Party Political ad in the 1992 election, where he got persuaded to do a little drive down memory lane in South London. They were trying to humanise him, make him look like slightly less of a grey figure, but he got really, really excited at seeing that his house that he grew up in was still there. And so, was it still there? Oh, it is. It is. And although he did win that election, he did get mocked for that. But it was a little bit like that. That people will get excited about, a building that is still there, and they've got a sense of nostalgic reverence for a place they've never been to, out of connection with people that they adore, which is really interesting. I reckon a Penny Lane probably now means more to fans than it does to Macca, because he's done a ton of other things in his life. He's been a wedding singer for Taylor Swift in the last few weeks, for goodness sake, at Madison Square Gardens. The man has only limited mental capacity for Penny Lane now. We can, recorded a couple of albums on a yacht in the Bahamas. Okay, great. So he's got so many other things in there. However, the fans, perhaps, and for those who kind of attached some extra meaning to their lives in relation to the songs, probably have a greater level of affection for the actual Penny Lane than he does. And I wonder if also it's a way of people getting closer to the thing that they love. It's a bit like the Abbey Road crossing. The chances are that there are, let's come up with a spurious statistic. 88% of people that have bought that album have had their photograph taken on that crossing.
That does seem pretty spurious, yes.
But it's that case of, loads of people go to Liverpool and they will do the Beatles sites, the Beatles talks. It's like, I am here as we are here, and you are here, and we're now all together. For goodness' sake, it's that sort of thing. But have you done the Penny Lane Street View walk yet?
No, I can't say that I have. No, no,
No.
no.
Well, so something I learned to do this other day, just on Penny Lane, there's a Croydon Road. I didn't know that.
Oh.
I'd have been straight up there if I'd have known that. It's like I've got a connection. I've got a connection to the Beatles because
Yeah,
there's a
yeah,
Croydon
yeah.
Road.
It was meant to be.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I think that in my life and Strawberry Fields and this are kind of like peak Liverpool nostalgia for the Beatles. And at this point, actually, I'm going to bring argument number 5 forward, and I'm going to say that this song, and maybe Strawberry Fields Forever, is the Beatles saying goodbye to Liverpool. It celebrates and memorializes the Liverpool they grew up in, but comes at a time when they've moved, that they've outgrown the city, they've outgrown its music scene. After all, they couldn't even be bothered to go back to Liverpool to record the video. The bits of the band in the video are either done in East London or in Kent at the same place where they filmed Strawberry Fields. So, there's something a bit weird. I mean, maybe they were just really, really busy. But you'd have thought if
I was going to say that I think that is also possible. I would be cautious about saying can't be bothered. Maybe did not have the opportunity is for sure true.
They're not in the studio every single day at this point, though, are they? They have a little bit of downtime. And if the director has said, "Well, we're gonna film Penny Lane," hey, I've got an idea. Why don't I film you walking down Penny Lane? Oh, okay, all right, interesting, fair enough. No, tell you what, we'll go to Kent instead. It's an interesting, sort of thought. I wonder how those conversations actually went. And also, bizarrely, if I'm going to sort of mention that at this point as well, do you not find it really, really odd in the video, bearing in mind it's Paul singing, that there's so much of just John?
I suppose so. I mean, it is a lyric which isn't 100% McCartney. So, I mean, he's entitled to his presence. But yeah, I don't really know why that would be. It's
John walking down the road and people having a look at the back, and a couple of minutes later, let's cut back, and it's John walking down the road. I think, okay, really,
I mean,
really interesting.
it kind of comes off as we didn't quite shoot enough footage to fill out the length of this song. So here, we'll just repeat some footage of John because, the people are coming and going, and that's quite a literal interpretation of what's going on in the song. Maybe that's a little bit harsh, but that's kind of slightly how it comes off at. So I'm gonna use that as the excuse for it this time out.
No, I think McCartney not be bothered to go to Liverpool. He couldn't be bothered to go to East London.
Yeah, lazy bastard. What did he think he was doing?
The video is just nonsense.
It's not very good. I mean, I really like this video for Strawberry Fields, but this is a noticeable and conspicuous step down. I mean, I would say.
I've written down here what the actual F is the horse riding about.
Well, it's probably an ironic juxtaposition of these poor working class boys who have now made it, in the big time and are now able to be surroundings with these, with the traps of a traditional English aristocracy and luxury, and whether they were truly going to be accepted into this kind of modern class now that they've been given like the MBE and become establishment figures. But we still have the iconoclasm of John Lennon being able to throw over the table and destroy like the candelabra and the tea set. So they're not truly accepting their position within this, even although they've kind of earned it through their hard work. How about that?
Well done, well done. I must admit, I thought I was going to win the pretentious twat of the episode prize, but you've just really gone for it there.
Underestimated me once again, young man.
Absolutely. I think it's really interesting. George looks older than the rest of them. The way that he's styled himself in this episode. What we're talking about in this video. He's aged, man. He's aged. God, dear. He's going to be, 24 at this point? He looks at least 40 odd. And George is a man who knows a thing about bad videos, or maybe this is where we started it, because I have been watching some of those from the 70s and the 80s, and they're really not very good. There's some Blow Away from 79 in particular is hilarious. The way in which he, with a sort of a pink kind of background behind him, does a little kind of walk while he's playing his guitar. He sort of, step to the right, step forward, step to the left, step back. And just think, oh my life, this is just hilarious. But then I'm also of the opinion that Got My Mind Set on You is a vastly overrated video. It just feels like someone was trying. I reckon he saw Sledgehammer and thought, oh, I want some of that technical innovation. And he just ended up with someone directing it who previously had put together a haunted house for the fairground.
Well, I don't think there's ever a moment. We'll put the movies to one side, but I don't think there's ever a moment in any videos where George looks like he's actually comfortable in front of the camera. He
No,
just never does. Maybe that's why he formed the film production company, because he's much happier behind the camera and being able to do stuff there. But as time wore on, the video becomes more of a necessity, and so he kind of has to begrudgingly stick something out that can be shown on top of the pops when he can't be arsed to turn up. So, here we are. Here's George. He's technically on screen. What do you want?
so the example I would cite for that is this song, in which he actually seems to do, he does some acting. He seems like he's singing the lyrics in a character to another character, and it's not good. It's really
No, it's not.
but then there you go. If anyone's earned the right not to be good at something, it's a Beatle, I think, or something. Speaking of which, next time, I'm probably on number 4 now. The Beatles are dirty bastards, aren't they?
Yeah. Next.
I read a blog about this, which I wrote down. Oh dear God! Just read a blog that suggests it's all about sex. Okay, all right. So, and this blog was trying to be really subversive, man. Said you'll never listen to this song in the same way ever again. Yeah, I will. I think I will. I think I'm perfectly capable of making my own makeup. And the one that stands out. I mean, there were several um, parts of the song that this writer was tugging on in order to kind of make some sort of stiff old argument, and it was in particular about the fireman with the picture of the Queen in his pocket, about how he keeps his fire engine clean. It's a clean machine, which is some sort of allusion to how can we put this? Let's just say masturbation. May as well just come out.
I think that's probably the correct way of putting it.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think it's better off being out in the open, really, isn't it? And I
Yeah,
think
you should let it all hang out.
I think so. I think so. I mean, it's possible, but really, okay. So
I mean, the thing is, yes, okay. Firstly, we know the Beatles are dirty bastards. Like, that's clear. Like, especially now, these days, we know about every grimy shagging Hamburg, and we know about the endless string of affairs they've all had, and particularly McQuarrie, because he's always seen as the nice one or whatever. But if you listen to like Big Barn Bed or Hi 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 from Wings, like, it's absolutely filthy. And there are plenty of other examples in his back catalogue as well. So it's not like a big surprise. And John Lennon's not shy about how much he enjoys sex, particularly again, sort of post Beatles and sort of post wedding album. Is it wedding album that's got him and Yoko like making love on it? I think, is it the first wedding? I can't remember.
Is it called the wedding album? I'm not thinking of Duran Duran in the early '90s, which they had the wedding album.
Is it whichever one it is? It's one of the unfinished music, Vol 1 or Vol 2.
Yeah.
I don't remember which one it is. I think it's Volume 1. Which has got him, and he's got his knob out in the cover and all the rest of it. So that's nice. So yeah, it's not a surprise to discover that these are gentlemen who enjoy the pleasures of the flesh. But that doesn't mean that every song can necessarily be interpreted through that lens. I'm all for alternative readings and whatever, but come on. Sometimes you just need to get a grip a little bit.
I know. But I suppose there are times, aren't there, when people want to claim a little bit of credibility in order just to prove that they're not. Two Virgins, I think, is the one you're thinking of.
Oh, Two Virgins, yeah, that's probably exactly. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, just the sort of credible man, because we're not just teeny pop people. But Yeah, it's fine. If he did, that's fine. I don't hear it in that way. If you hear it in that way, that's fine. But I thought it was quite interesting that the next a website I clicked on was a Learn English vocabulary blog that goes through the key vocabulary in the song, including words like pleasure, Mac, hourglass, and trim, and explains what those words mean to people who are learning the English language. Sort of English as a second or other language kind of thing. And so I thought it was really interesting that that blog highlighted some of the key vocabulary that the previous blog suggested would directly mention reference to sex. Because a Mac, oh, actually, you didn't go for the flashes, Mac. Said, oh, Mac, it's like a condom in it. Oh, okay, is it? Ah, right.
Is
Whereas,
it
of course,
so?
the Learn English vocabulary blog was Mac. It's a Macintosh. It's a type of raincoat that English people tend to wear. Well, British people as well, I suspect.
Yeah, that's okay. But
Sorry, Scotland, home
no,
of the
that's I mean, I do kind of think of Max as being an English thing, so I don't feel you're excluding us for saying it that way. But also like the whole thing about the fireman, sliding down the pole, polishing his helmet, like that's kind of cheesy, kind of porno imagery from
yeah.
God knows how many decades. It's like, yeah, you don't need to have a big stretch of imagination to interpret it that way. But I don't know that there's anything actually in the lyric that really suggests that.
No, but it would back up my argument about it being an updated version of Yellow Submarine, because you could then
Well,
make the
quite.
case that it's a kind of a pseudo comedy song. But I don't want to see this as a comedy song.
I don't think
got
it
a little
is.
bit
I don't
more
think it
respect for it.
is. Yeah. Well, and it's that we sort of touched briefly upon sort of surrealism and
Careful.
psychedelia earlier, and I'm not
Words.
going to. It's all right. I'm not going to go too deep into it. Don't worry.
Okay.
But you mentioned, and I didn't get the chance to jump in when you did, when you were talking about sort of nostalgia and the past and the way that this is kind of almost a eulogy for their time in Liverpool. That's always been a function of British psychedelia, that looking back, that childhood kind of thing. Yellow Submarine certainly falls into this. I think Penny Lane does as well, and to a certain extent on the sort of Lennon side, that kind of Lewis Carroll kind of imagery, all that kind of stuff. So there are plenty of sort of nostalgic aspects there, but then does looking back at the past does always have to be seen through the lens of nostalgia? I don't think it probably does, but I think that this song probably does do that. And if this is kind of a eulogy for the time in Liverpool, because I'm trying to think if there are any other songs which are in the future which are quite so specifically about Liverpool or that kind of time and place.
One after 909, maybe.
Maybe, but that was written,
Yeah.
was it late 50s, early 60s. So yeah, I suppose if you want to do that, but not really any further contemporaneous compositions, unless I'm missing something really, really, really obvious.
But I suppose the point about place that those two previous arguments are kind of delved, or two of the previous arguments delved into. It's not just the Beatles that are doing it. 67 also sees Waterloo Sunset and Itchy Park, for example. So
Yeah,
I do wonder if, to kind of tie some of those ideas together, that inevitably, once we kind of saturated the market, or these bands have saturated the market with this kind of content, they are then looking for something else to write about. And once you get to the point that you realize you can write about your own personal experience beyond whether or not you're having sex with someone, or want to have sex with somebody else, want to have sex with you, you then start looking around. And I suppose it's only inevitable that you're going to then try and draw upon some aspect of the past or some aspect of place. And we don't do songs about place as well as I think America does. But if you want to know more about that, just listen to every third episode of the Word podcast, because that's one of David Hepworth's most repeated arguments. So I'm not going to get into that there. But you do get this here. And I think it's sort of interesting that people are doing it at the same time. By the way, I should point out with Waterloo. I read this interview with Ray Davis I think with the Liverpool Echo. I mean, it was sort of clicked through various things together. It was in about 2010 where he was publicising his latest tour, shows in Liverpool, where in conversation with the Liverpool Echo, he said that originally it was going to be called, I think, Merseyside Sunset, but he decided, oh, no, Penny Lane's just come out. I can't really do that because I've got a lot of reverence for Merseyside. He said, love Liverpool. Liverpool's such a great city. And I would love to know if there's even a slither of truth in that, or whether it's something that he's learned as a publicist to say in order to drive ticket sales, because it doesn't feel like it's anything other than a London song.
It's one of the most London songs that's ever been written, in fact.
Yeah,
It's a beautiful, I adore Waterloo Sunset. It's a truly amazing song. But I don't know. I haven't heard,
Merseyside. Yeah, no,
I haven't heard that before. And so I don't have, I need time to process that and have a think about it because I've spent the entirety of my life thinking of Waterloo Sunset as a London song, and indeed one of the most London songs. And so, yeah, I don't know. And we know that Ray Davis is absolutely full of shit, so there's no big surprise. Sorry, I could probably find a more diplomatic way of putting that, but it's true. And so I'm well prepared to believe that he would say something like that because he thinks it will get a reaction, or because, yeah, like he knows how to sell a story rather than because there's any truth in it. But like, maybe there is. Maybe there is some truth in it. I don't know. Had he spent a lot of time in Liverpool prior to, when was Waterloo Sunset? Is that 67?
67, yeah. 67.
Yeah. Had he spent a lot of time in Liverpool? Where does his... I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure about that one, I got to say.
Okay, right. So I'm going to go for, and of course, it occurred to me earlier that I was going to introduce in a different way. I was going to do I've got a theory deep inside. Oh, yeah. So we'll do that now for the last argument. Penny Lane is, I was trying to work out, I always get stuck on this. Cleverer or more clever? I'm too stupid to work out which is right. I'm going to go, it's more clever than Strawberry Fields Forever because it doesn't try to be clever. So I think that Strawberry Fields wears its achievement on its sleeve. Although that said, if you read, there's a particularly bitter part of the Lennon Playboy interview shortly before his death, where he talks about McCartney. I think he says subconsciously sabotaging some of his best songs. We'll come back to that perhaps when we talk about Across the Universe, for example, which is another one that he feels really quite bitter about. He does talk about how he feels that Strawberry Fields Forever is badly recorded, but he gets away with it because it's a really good song. I suspect that a lot of people would disagree with that. A lot of people really love the way it's recorded and the sounds that appear on it. But then if you remember back to the previous episode, some of my argument was that I prefer it when it was a much more kind of straightforward guitar-based song than when it starts to become a little bit more clever. Now, I think Penny Lane is more subtle. I think it's a simple pop song that's drenched in subtle cleverness. And I think it radiates that cleverness and poise through its arrangements and the way it builds and then revisits ideas later on. And I think its simplicity kind of contrasts nicely. I think if it wasn't on a double A side with Strawberry Fields, perhaps I wouldn't feel this way. But it does almost feel like you're being asked to compare this with this, and to think of this as McCartney and to think of this as Lennon. And I think there's an arch cleverness to Strawberry Fields that alienates me, and I appreciate that's just a me thing. Whereas here is kind of openness and sort of quiet simplicity is really inviting and warm and welcoming. And then you get the sound effects, you get the little cleverness of, she feels as if she's in a play. She is anyway, whatever that means. I don't care what it means. It's clever. It's nice. I like it. The old clean machine, the ring of the bell. the amazing piccolo solo, the brass in general on this. I just think it it's brilliant without sort of standing up and shouting to the rooftops, "Hey, look at me! Aren't I really clever?"
I think that is one of the things which sort of, like you're saying, people are encouraged to think of one as Lennon and one as McCartney, and I think that is one of sort of the defining differences between them. I think when Lennon is kind of being brashly clever, I think it often comes across as slightly insecure. Like he feels the need for people to see him as clever, whereas this simply is, and it gets on with the business of being that. I don't think that one approach is necessarily sort of better or worse than the other, but they are kind of necessarily different from each other. Certainly, the strength of this lyric is in how cleverly it's put together. It's a very intelligently written lyric. We were talking earlier about how it's quite fragmentary. We have different time frames. We have different characters doing different things. We have different times of the year, all this kind of stuff. So it is a kind of fragmentary. I'm really avoiding the word kaleidoscopic here, but it is a fragmentary kind of piece of imagery. But I don't like the word kaleidoscopic. I don't think that's a good description of the lyric.
No, I think that came up in McDonald, didn't it? I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, exactly, and that's not the word that I would use for it. It's more like an MC Escher kind of landscape. It feeds back on itself. It intertwines with itself. It has this kind of very clever, surrealistic kind of build, but it also presents itself very straightforwardly, very simply. If you don't listen to it that closely, if you're listening to it on the radio whilst you're driving to work, it's a nice tune. It's clever. It has a really clever melody, this song. So I'm not going to talk much about sort of the music or the melody, but it is a really clever melody, and it really bounces about all over the place. It's tremendously well put together, but it's all done with such apparent ease. And I do use the word apparent because it was complex to record. There's like about a bajillion pianos on it or whatever just to achieve that one unique sound. Like, it's not an easy thing, but it wears itself so effortlessly, and that is an incredible skill and one of the great joys of this song, and one of the things that makes it so appealing, makes it so accessible. But with that accessibility, when you start to dive into it, there's so much depth there's so much which can be revealed if you choose to do that. But if you don't want to, there's still functions as just like a really great pop song, like a really good slice of like mid-60s pop music, written, recorded and produced for pretty much anyone to be able to enjoy, whether it's the kids buying like the latest Beatles album, whether it's your parents, whether it's somebody in between. But there's so much depth and complexity underneath the surface here, and that's what makes it work. It's a very sly song. It's a very clever song, but in a completely different way to Strawberry Fields.
Yeah, that's much more straightforward and less pretentious way of putting it than MacDonald chooses, because he uses such things as breezily vertical, jaunty triplet melody, counterpointed by a high-lying bass, etc., etc. Okay.
I don't know what any of those words mean. I mean, I know what they mean individually. It's just putting them all together in that order. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen kaleidoscopic used in a couple of places. Yeah, and that whole thing about what is it? It's like a year in a day, and it deals both like a moment in time, but also a long period of time, and so on and so forth. I think it's wonderful that so many people are able to interpret so much about this in those ways. Good on them. And yeah, you like that kind of thing? Oh, actually, I found it. Yeah, I found it. It's in a footnote, seemingly naturalistic. The lyric scene is actually kaleidoscopic. As well as raining and shining at the same time, it is simultaneously summer and winter. Ah, well, technically, I think the 11th of November is still autumn, isn't it? But I don't think winter technically starts. I think you'll find BBC are probably still doing autumn watch around that time. I think winter technically starts much later than that. But there you go. Yeah, so there's all of that. It's hey, look, this is what we should be saying on this podcast. This song, like all of it, it's whatever you want it to be, in it, man.
Yeah, and we haven't even talked about the Ruttles yet.
No, but actually, the point of that is something I came across something on the BFI website for the bots in Southeast Asia. That's the British Film Institute on their website last night, where they've got a link to a film that was also made in '67, a video for this song, made by I need to remember some of the details. Actually, it was quite interesting. The person that made the video, I think, did it not say on there? He ended up being the director of photography on Give My Regards to Broad Street, which is a bit of a weird
Correct. Yes.
turnaround face. But apart from that, he had actually done some good things, including including this video. It was a much more literal take on it, but it was really effective. But the point for raising it is because one of the very last shots, if not the last shot, is of a double back alley.
Very good. Yes, indeed. Macmillan, that's who did this. I'll put a link to this article on the BFI in the show notes for the episode when it goes up, because I think it's a really, really interesting video to watch, especially if you kind of compare it and contrast it with the official one for Penny Lane. Thank you very much for sending it to me. It was really, really interesting to see. And yeah, I'll stick it in the show notes if anybody else wants to check it out. It's very different, but very effective.
And I think it's probably worth saying that because we probably should talk about covers at some point, even though, by the way, the bass is good on this, the instrumentation's fine, blah, 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 Ringo, perfectly fine, so on and so forth. We should have that conversation, really, shouldn't we? But the best cover version of this really is Double Back Alley, because everything else is so blandly straightforward. Even World Pie, I mean, come on, what were you doing? It's such a boring, straightforward. Anyway, but it really hits the tone. You almost feel like it's one of those where, John might have phoned up Neil Hinnis and gone, "It's a bit close, isn't it, lad?" But it does work really nicely, even down to the lyrical tone that is both sort of looking back on the past in a positive, but also a kind of a negative way as well. You can sort of see it. It's nostalgic, but also a phew, glad I'm not there anymore kind of vibe to it.
Yeah, exactly. I needless to say, love Double Back Alley. I think it's a fantastic song, and it is almost uncannily good at being able to capture that sense of place that the original does. And like, so talking about sex earlier, but this one has Play Peekaboo with Sackler and Sally in it, so but again, it's getting the specifics of that language. Peekaboo with Sackler and Sally. It's showing her drawers and all those kind of little, just nice little, that's the right language. And it's that specificity that makes it so effective, And yeah, like you said, it is nostalgia, but it's not just rose tinted glasses. Yeah, I like stinking of gin, and that's not normally regarded as a good thing. Or the suit, the way that everything was black, the smoke in the suit, all that kind of stuff. So it is. I love Double Back Alley. It is effortlessly the best cover version, if we want to say that. I will mention there is a Barbara Dixon, because we're a very pro Barbara Dixon podcast. There's a Barbara Dixon cover of this. It's from 1974, though. It's also really unremarkable. Sorry, Barbara. It's just not a song. People just play it straight. And I get why that is, but there's not a lot of stuff to talk about with cover versions this week, I gotta say.
Fair enough. Was there anything else you wanted to add? It feels like we've covered quite a lot of ground without necessarily talking about too much that's specific. Although maybe we have, but yeah.
No, I don't think I've, honestly. I think we've kind of touched upon pretty much everything. Yeah, I don't really have much to say about it. This does have a great bass line. I haven't really mentioned that, and I will say the bass line to Penny Lane is really, really great. It's a little bit muted, I would say, in kind of like the original version, but subsequent productions which have kind of sort of like remastered it or whatever have helped to sort of bring that bass line up. And it's a really kind of, this isn't maybe an odd word to describe a bass line, but it's a really elegant bass line. It's really fantastic. I don't really have an awful lot else to say about the music. We've talked about the lyrics enough already, so I think I'm probably all good. But it's really something. It's a really amazing piece of work.
I think you'll find the highlining bass counterpoint to the jaunty triplet melody.
Oh my God, those words were just right on the tip of my tongue.
There you go. There you go.
Okay. Do you have anything else you want to say about it?
No, no, I don't think so. I think it's it could easily, in the wrong hands, have been a very, very uh, Radio 2 song. And that kind of stereotypical, very radio friendly, generic, inoffensive kind of song. But it's so much better than that. It
So much
does
better
all
than
of
that.
that, but with a cleverness that makes it, that really gives you something to listen to each time. And then you're not necessarily hearing anything new, but you just sort of you get reminded about its cleverness, and its sophistication, and the solo, just fantastic. David Mason, I believe, and I think you just have to acknowledge the brilliance of that. So jaunty, and it counterpoints the high. Anyway, never mind. 9.
9, thank you. That's all I wanted to know. Which is interesting because you get Strawberry Fields 8. So,
Yep.
yeah, that tracks.
Yep.
I'm giving it 10. Double 10. I think Strawberry Fields Penny Lane is the best single of the 1960s, and it might simply be the best single. I think both of these works are absolutely astonishing. So, I'm giving it a 10.
Okay, well, I have to say, the best single, you're rating it above Heaven 17's We Don't Dig This Fascist Groove thing. I think that is wildly controversial.
Yeah, I know. And, obviously we love the H17 boys. Like, don't get me wrong. But, sometimes you just got to make a judgment call on these things. I've probably also now broken Tiffany's heart because much though I think we're alone now. I just got to rate this ever so fractionally higher.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I mean, but you compete against the double A side. Not sure that's a fair comparison. I think we have to compare
No,
with a
well. All right, fair enough. That's all right.
Club Tropicana. I mean, that's got to be up there as well, isn't it?
Okay, good. Let's end this episode quickly. You can really get a hold of us, especially if you are a bot. You can contact us by email. We are BeatlesStuffology@gmail.com. We're Beatles Stuffology on Instagram, and you can follow my blog at www.jgmcquarrie.scot. Like I said, I'll put a link to that video in the show notes, the alternative video for Penny Lane, because it's really worth a watch. And if any of our dear listeners do choose to watch it, please get in touch with us and let us know what you think of it. Also, please like, rate, and review us on whatever podcatcher you're using so that more people can find the show. It's time next episode to dive into the full red vividness of 1967 as we tackle the opening track to Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. And as always, we hope you're going to join us for it. But until then, keep listening.